Hey everyone, welcome back to another explainer. If you're looking to finally demystify reading music, specifically for the cello, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're taking a visual journey straight from the standard musical staff right down to the strings of your instrument.
Have you ever stared at a piece of sheet music and felt like you were looking at some kind of intimidating secret code? Honestly, it's completely normal. But here's the great news. It's a code with a really logical structure. So think of this explainer as your ultimate decoder ring. We aren't just going to memorize arbitrary dots today. We're going to build a solid, reliable bridge from the paper directly to the physical placement of your hands on the cello.
Here's our blueprint for today. 1. Decoding the bass staff. 2. Going beyond with ledger lines. 3. The 4 cello strings. 4. Fingerboard tapes, 1, 3, 4. And 5. Mastering the low 2. Let's just dive right in.
Section 1. Decoding the bass staff.
Notice that golden symbol right there. That is the bass clef. This symbol is absolutely crucial because it tells us exactly what language we're speaking. The staff it anchors is made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces between those lines. Now, a note can either live directly on a line or can fit snugly in the space right between 2 lines. But what's the absolute most important rule when you're reading this map? We always count the 5 lines and the 4 spaces starting from the bottom up, bottom to top, every single time.
Okay, so how do we actually memorize all these positions without getting completely overwhelmed? Well, instead of trying to memorize a chaotic sea of dots all at once, we use an anchor. The source material introduces this brilliant little technique called the Mr. Smith patented way to learn the bass staff. It's a real game changer. Step 1, you just find the middle line. Step 2, you memorize that this exact middle note is a D. That is your home bass. And step 3, to find literally any other note, you just count up or down the lines and spaces using the musical alphabet.
Here is your anchor, that D note, sitting exactly on the 3rd line, right in the middle. From here, you just move through the musical alphabet. So, moving up from this middle D to the space right above it, that gives you an E. Go up to the 4th line, you've got an F. The top space is a G. Land right on top of the 5th line, you're at A. And if a note sits entirely in the space just above the whole staff, that's a B. See? You just progress alphabetically. D, E, F, G, A, B.
And traveling down the staff is honestly just as logical. You just count backwards in the musical alphabet. Starting again from our D anchor on that 3rd line, moving down to the 2nd space gets you a C. Down to the 2nd line is a B, the bottom space is an A, and the very first line at the bottom of the bass staff, that's a G. If you drop down into the space entirely below the staff, that gives you an F. Once you've got that D anchor locked in, the rest is just simple counting.
Section 2. Going beyond with ledger lines.
The concept here is wonderfully practical, you know? When we run out of lines on the staff, we just draw our own. These tiny temporary extensions are called ledger lines. They basically let us read notes in both the higher and lower registers of the cello without having to invent a whole new staff system. It's kind of like building a temporary ladder when you run out of stairs. Let's look at the key ledger line anchors you're going to need as a beginner. If you draw one ledger line above the top of the staff, that note is a C. On the flip side, if you go to the bottom and draw one ledger line below the staff, that's an E. The space just below that first ledger line is a D. And if you drop down to the 2nd ledger line below the staff, that is a C. Now this is a crucial point. That C, sitting 2 full ledger lines below the staff, is the absolute lowest physical note you can possibly play on your cello.
Section 3. The 4 cello strings.
As you probably know, the cello has 4 open strings from lowest to highest, C, G, D, and A. But notice how they actually stagger across the staff. The C string handles the deep, rumbling notes below the staff, handing things off to the G string right at the bottom line. Then the D string takes over at our middle anchor, and finally, the A string carries you all the way up into the highest register above the staff. It's a perfect handoff system.
Section 4. Fingerboard tapes. 1, 3, 4.
Now, as a beginner, your fingerboard is usually marked with 3 primary tapes to guide your physical hand placement. Think of these tapes kind of like visual markers for exactly where you need to press the string to create the notes we literally just mapped out on the staff.
Now, here is where cellists have a very specific physical reality to master, and honestly, it's a bit surprising at first. The first tape, the one furthest away from you towards the scroll, is played with your first finger, your index finger. Okay, that makes sense. But when you play the second tape, surprise, you actually don't use your second finger. You put your first 3 fingers down, making sure your third finger, your ring finger, lands directly on that second tape. And the third tape, That one's reserved for your littlest finger, the fourth finger, which requires all 4 fingers to be pushing down on the fingerboard simultaneously. So the pattern is 1, 3, 4.
Let's tie this theory and the physical practice together. It's actually pretty cool. When you add a finger, you simply step up to the next letter of the musical alphabet. Let's take the G string, for example. The open string is G. Your first finger on the first tape gives you an A. Put your third finger on the second tape, you get a B. And putting your fourth finger on the third tape gets you a C. This highly structured, totally repeatable pattern applies across all 4 strings, moving you seamlessly straight through the alphabet.
Section 5. Mastering the low 2.
So what exactly is a low 2? Musically speaking, it means going down a half step from the pitch a regular second finger would normally play. But physically, for your left hand, it has a very distinct sensation. If you're playing a low 2, your first finger and your second finger must literally touch each other on the fingerboard. Sometimes there's a specific tape for this right next to the first finger tape, but a lot of times you just have to feel for that close physical contact between your index and middle fingers. They should feel squished right together.
Let's look at exactly how this alters the pitch on each string. Dropping in that low 2 gives you an E flat on the C string, a B flat on the G string, an F natural on the D, and a C natural on the A string. Understanding this physical adjustment is absolutely key because it unlocks so many different scales and pieces of music later on.
And there you have it. You've decoded the bass staff from the bottom up, ventured into ledger lines, mapped the ranges to your 4 strings, mastered the quirky 1-3-4 finger tape logic, and totally unlocked the low 2. You have successfully translated a paper blueprint into physical action. The structure is right there, waiting for you. So the only question left to ask is, now that you have this powerful cello blueprint, what musical masterpiece will your hands build next? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy practicing.